Hello and welcome to the program, People, Politics and Power. I am Imoni Amarere, and today we will navigate the currents of the ever-changing politics of the West African country of Togo. We shall delve into the minds of some thought leaders whose voices are demanding to be heard. On Monday, April 29, 2024, voters in Togo went to the polls to elect a 113-seat national parliament and 179 regional legislators. This is part of a controversial and contentious constitutional reform process to move the country from a presidential to a parliamentary system of government, which will change the mode of choosing the president from direct to indirect elections. Under the constitutional changes, which were endorsed by the Togolese National Assembly on April 19, 2024, members of parliament will elect the president, who will in turn appoint the president of Council of Ministers, the equivalent of a prime minister in a parliamentary system of government with executive powers. The prime minister would be appointed from within the party or coalition of parties with a majority in parliament. But opposition political parties and civil society groups in the country have been vehemently opposed to the reforms, which they say is a ploy for tenure elongation by President Faure Gnassingbé, who has been in power since 2005, after the death of his father, who ruled the West African country with an iron fist for almost 4 decades. Politics and government have been dominated for over 5 decades by one political party, the Union for the Republic, UNIR, and the Gnassingbé dynasty. Observers argue that the constitutional and electoral reforms leading to the elections violate Article 2, subsection 1 of Section 2 of the ECOWAS Supplementary Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance of 2001 on the mechanisms for conflict prevention, management, resolution, peacekeeping, and security. That article forbids any substantial modification to the electoral laws of any member country of ECOWAS 6 months before an election, except when the consent or with the consent of a majority of the political actors. Now, despite this anomaly, ECOWAS was one of the few organizations that was allowed to send an observation mission for the elections, even as the foreign media was shut out of the country. The political development in Togo and the implications for democracy and good governance in the West African sub-region, and by extension, the African continent, is our focus on the program today. We will have joining us guests from Togo itself. We also have joining us from London, global affairs analyst Paul Ejime, and we also have in the studio here Professor Jidofo Adibe, who is a political scientist and a teacher at the Nasarawa State University. We'll get to meet them right after this break. Stay with us.
Dream. The Nigeria we need is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
All right, let's get to meet our guests. We're joined from London by Paul Ejime, who is an author, a global affairs analyst, and consultant on peace and security and governance communications. Paul, thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you, my brother, Amarili, and Good afternoon, viewers.
Welcome. All right, we're also joined by Echo David Dose. He is the spokesperson of Togo Stand Up Citizens Front, which is a civil society movement, and is also the coordinator of Let's Turn the Togo page. That is the English translation of the name, which is actually in French. Thank you, Mr. Dose, for joining us all the way from Togo.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here this morning and to speak about the situation in my country. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And we will be joined very shortly by Professor Jideofo Adebe, who is a lecturer in political science at the Nasarawa State University. But let's begin this way, Mr. Duse. What is the situation in Togo right now? The elections took place on Monday, but this is Friday, 4 days after results have not been declared.
Yes, as you said, we are still waiting for the results, but I can say that the atmosphere is very, very bad. People are very angry because of too many two things. The first one is the new constitution adopted by the parliament 2 weeks ago, and until now we don't have the text. We don't know what is exactly in the text of the new constitution. It's the first thing. The second thing is that, as you said, we we went through the parliamentary election. It was on Monday, and on the ground, we faced many bad situation. Um, we can say that the election was not fair, was not democratic, and this is very bad for our country, for Togo, but it's also very bad for our region. I want to speak about ECOWAS. We need to improve democracy as in Senegal, as in other countries. So we have many things to do in Togo to improve the situation.
Let's take a step backwards a bit and look at the constitutional reform, which was passed by the National Assembly on the 19th of April. Now, is a movement from the presidential system to the parliamentary system. Was that process inclusive? Did it carry along everybody, both those in government and those outside of government, civil society groups and opposition parties, in accepting this new constitution?
The process was not inclusive, and it was done without transparency. As you said, the new constitution was adopted 2 weeks ago, but until now, we don't know what is in the text of the new constitution. So uh, it's like 87% in the parliament decided to change the constitution for nearly 9 million of people in Togo. The process was not inclusive because any civil society, any political party of opposition, any people, any structure of the nation was in discussion with the government and with the parliament about the new constitution and the need for our country to go through this process. We say that a new constitution is not a priority for Togo. We have many challenges. And we don't understand why for the government and for the parliament, for the regime, it was so important to go through this process in this way. No transparency, no inclusiveness of people. The process was illegitimate. The process was also illegal. I think that we will come and go through this, what I am saying, because we have many to say about the process, the bad process which conducted our country through the new constitution.
All right, let's bring in Mr. Paul Ejime at this point in time. You have been monitoring the process in Togo and indeed in most of the West African region, the democratic processes and of course the activities of the ECOWAS, the sub-regional body. First, let me ask you, why do you think that it was necessary for Togo to go this route? Why was it necessary for Togo to, at this point in time, decide to carry out constitutional reforms and move from one form of government to another?
So thank you, my brother. The point is that all these are ploys by dictators. What is happening is that for Yasimbe, who came to power in 2005 after the death of his father, who had governed for almost 4 decades, wants to continue. They call it, what they have in Togo, they say it is dynastic democracy. But one must commend civil society groups like that of David Dosey, because the situation in Togo does not allow for alternative views. The army is so repressive. Remember that Ford's father used to be a military man. He transmuted from military to civilian after the first coup in 1963 and then another one in 1967. He seized power from that coup of 1967 and had remained there until his death. And after his death, the military, which is, by the way, ethnically divided, they come mainly from the Kabie group, which is a minority group compared to the Eves, So the military imposed four, or more or less, on the country because they didn't follow the constitution. And so from there, they have supported him like they supported his father, to continue on this path. So it is about his political ambition. It is about the fear, I think, of the military that if they lose power, because the military is now populated, the hierarchy is populated by the Kabie ethnic group. I think their fear is that if somebody from another ethnic group like the Ewe takes power, they may lose power and relevance. So they are pushing for to be there, and for himself is also capitalizing on that to elongate his authority and more or less prolong the Yadema dynasty in power. So this is what we have. So all these calculations, all these maneuvers, they are pointing to that. And with a repressive army, one will commend David and his group. But like I have said, they shouldn't expect anybody from outside to come and pull the chestnut out of the fire for them. They have to control their own destiny. The movement to end the Yadema dynasty in the guise of democracy must come from within before we will come to the failure of ECOWAS. For instance, when this violation of the protocol, 2001 protocol has happened, with the kind of way the change of constitution has happened, it is a coup. When it happened, ECOWAS ought to come out clear and then unequivocal to say, listen, you are violating this rule. And that is the problem that ECOWAS has today, that it is speaking with too many voices. It's inconsistent. It will say one thing to another. And that is why we now have 4 countries that are being governed by the military. And the military, these hunters are challenging ECOWAS. Then why are you allowing the political leadership to carry out constitutional ballot box and political coups, but it's only when the military comes that then you come heavily on them. This is not to justify military takeover, but if you want to maintain your the line of regional integration, which the dream of the founding fathers, you need to be consistent. You need to maintain a principled stance. Have a rule of the thumb application of all the protocols and instrumentalities that you have. By the way, it's unfortunate, Yadema, the father, was one of those that supported
who founded,
General
yes.
Gowon of Nigeria.
Yes.
General
In
Gowon of
founding the
Nigeria
ECOWAS.
to set up ECOWAS. So
That's right.
let me stop there and allow others to come in.
All right, thank you, Paul. Stay with us. I'm happy to announce that Professor Jideofa Adibe has now joined us here in the studio. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Professor Adibe teaches political science at the Nasarawa State University in Nasarawa State, just our backdoor neighbor here. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we're looking at the developments in Togo. And like you heard Paul say, he thinks that it is a ploy by the Nasingbe dynasty to continue to be in power. The father was in power for almost 4 decades. He has been in power since 2005, and now there is a constitutional reform that has moved the country's political system from the presidential system to the parliamentary system. And the thinking of many analysts is that he is likely to be a beneficiary of this new system. Do you think so?
Well, first of all, you have to look at his pedigree. It was in the protests of 1990, protests that happened when his father actually had to restore term limits, which was abolished. That was restored, I think, in 1992 or 2002. But in 2015, together with Yahya Jammeh in Gambia, they opposed ECOWAS resolution for term limits. And if you followed what happened in 2017 in Togo, the crisis where the opposition forces and so many other, including from his northern political base, came together to challenge and oppose, call for the resignation of Nasimbe, saying that they were tired of the dynasty. So people were already suspicious. And a few days ago, was it 2 days ago, I read a report from the leader of the Catholic faithfuls in Togo, Bishop Benoit, saying there was no insufficient consultation. And there are suspicions, again, that this is part of the constitutional coup. Because at that time, during the 2017 crisis, one of the concessions he made was to bring back term limits in the 2019 constitutional amendment. So now he ran in 2020, which will expire in 2025. And then if he gets this 6th term, we don't really know, the new constitution now created 2 president of the Republic and president of the Council of Ministers.
The president is actually a ceremonial office.
Both of them are called president.
Yes.
President of the Republic and president of the Council of
Ministers, which is equivalent to a prime minister.
Yes. So the thinking is that this man is going to, looking at his pedigree and that of his father, and that is going now to continue. And that is justified because if you look at the crisis that happened in 2015 and 2017 and how they were repressed, and even Ghana tried to intervene and broker a deal, part of the deal was to bring back constitutional term limits. And then after, towards nearing the end of his tenure again, he brought in this idea of another coup d'etat, constitutional coup making. Let me even say something about what the colleagues said about ECOWAS. One of the reasons why the legitimacy around ECOWAS is eroding fast is that it focuses narrowly on military coups. We condemn military coups, but we have identified there are basically 3 types of coups in Africa. You have constitutional coup making, in which those in power amend the constitution willy-nilly and then extend or elongate what you call in Nigeria to elongate their tenure. And then you have also electoral coup making, by which people rig themselves to power And the electoral body is incapable of doing anything. So when the military comes in, it's another form of coup. So people are actually waiting to see what will be the reaction of ECOWAS. Of course, ECOWAS has become a little more wobbly with the departure of the other three countries.
ECOWAS, as it were, was one of the few organizations
Regional organizations
that was allowed to send an observation mission to this election,
Yeah.
to Monday's election. The others were the AU, and then there's also the French-speaking African states,
Yeah.
their own organization. There were very few, because even the Catholic Church
Yeah.
that you spoke about was not allowed to observe the elections.
It's not even that. In March, when this was first passed in March, there were uproar. And the Nasimba said, okay, we are going to wait and carry out more consultations. And suddenly, boom, utilizing his majority in the parliament. And as he said, his ethnic affiliation, and carried out this. We are just going to wait and see how this is going to play out. But the omens are not looking good.
All right. Paul, if you're still with us, let's go back. FOR has, since 2005, won 4 elections. Most of it one-sided. Opposition was not given any opportunity to, in fact, campaign and stand in the elections. Only some of the opposition parties that appear to be sympathetic to government, and then you had independent candidates who won, I think, about 18 seats in parliament, as it were, but on each occasion appear to have voted with the ruling party in parliament. Now, he was supposed, his tenure is supposed to run out by 2025. But with this change from presidential to parliamentary, how much more time is he likely to have sitting there in power?
Thank you. For as long as the Togo'S will allow him, I think that is what it is, because much has been said about ECOWAS and what they can do. ECOWAS is not a policeman, but they have failed to the people by not pointing out some of these very critical and dangerous violation of their own text, of their own instruments. I mentioned again the 2001 supplementary protocol on democracy and good governance. You read the what section 2 said there, that there shouldn't be any substantial changes to the electoral law with 6 months before any election, except with the consultation of the majority of the people. And like Joseph said there, David, there was no Togolese do not even know what is in the changes or their constitution, which has now changed the way they are voting for the president or prime minister. And so these are major changes. This is a violation of the ECOWAS protocol. And ECOWAS is, by the way, they made the worst of the case by issuing two, divergent statements when they sent a fact-finding mission, a pre-election fact-finding mission that went there from 15th to 20th. One had said that they were going to explore the situation and look at these changes. Another one came withdrawing the first one, saying that the mission was just going to go and it was a pre-election mission. Pre-election, what election? Most of the elections that have taken place in Togo did not meet the international standard. They were not transparent. For instance, that of 2018, the parliamentary one, which was boycotted by the opposition, there was what is it called? There was no level playing field. And so you can't call it election or re-election. It was actually state managed to have FOR to remain in power. When they imposed him on the people in 2005, there was an uproar. And then they said he was the interim president. From there, what seemed like a sham election was organized, and then they say he won re-election. And look at what he's doing with it. And ECOWAS is standing by. But the main thing, like it happened during apartheid, it is the people of Togo that should also pull their socks together, and people will die. I'm not suggesting that people must die, but if it comes to that, because it's about the future, not only of Togolese, but of ECOWAS, they have to see that this dictatorship and repression does not continue. And nobody can do it for them. They have to start it before others can join. This is the point I'm making. So all this rigmarole and roller coaster movement, you saw what Macky Sall was trying to do in the similar thing in Senegal.
Okay.
But Senegalese stood up and then came up and said, no, enough is enough. And I think this is what, but ECOWAS, AU, because what happened is that you have to observe elections when you are invited by the authorities. So the authorities in Togo, I think they want to legitimize an illegitimacy by inviting ECOWAS, inviting AU, and then La Francophonie. These are the three agencies, that went. And what did they say? They say in their joint statement, they said the election was inclusive. I don't know what that means. Inclusive of what? The turnout was poor. If you ask David, he will tell you. And so it is a state-managed affair, a constitutional coup, an electoral coup, and then that will be backed by the army that is known for its notorious for suppression of civil society, in fact, protest is banned in Togo. So there is every recipe for chaos, for
Okay.
anarchy.
All
And
right.
ECOWAS and everybody who loves Togo should be careful and be vigilant about
All
it.
right, thank you, Paul. Let's quickly bring in Dose at this point in time. Dose, I'd like to ask, how united is the opposition and the civil society in Togo?
Thank you very much. Really, I must say that the unity of opposition and civil society need to be improved just now. We are facing 3 or 4 years of very bad situation in terms of unity of the forces which are trying to create democracy here in Togo. The forces which are trying to stop the dynastic family Nyasingbe here in Togo. But I am sure that in the next weeks, in the next months, because of what we are facing just now, the new coup, as we are saying in this TV station, it's a real coup. And to stop this coup, this constitutional coup, we need ourselves to be more united, to be more strategic in order to be able to face the situation. We cannot only say that, okay, ECOWAS must come and be the policeman, even though we are sure that ECOWAS need to say something very clear to the government of Togo, because as Paul said, when you see the protocol, the supplementary protocol of ECOWAS on good governance and democracy, you have many, many articles which are violated by the constitutional coup. And even
All right,
AU,
David.
when
David, I'm sorry, I have to cut in there. We have to go for a live event at this point in time, but stay with us. We'll be back with you in a moment. We are cutting off now to a live event here in Nigeria. Stay with us.